Hello and welcome to the Action Network podcast, UFC betting preview. I'm Sean Zerillo, joined today by Billy Ward to help you break down our best bets, favorite underdogs, top props, and more for this weekend's UFC card going down in Kansas City, Missouri on Saturday night. 14-fight card, 8 prelims at 6 p.m. Eastern. Pretty good pacing there. 6-fight main card at 9 p.m. Eastern. If you'd like to tail some of the bets that we discuss on today's show, make sure to find the quick slip links in the podcast and the video description, or go to actionnetwork.com/bet now. The main event, a 5-round welterweight fight between Ian Machado Garry, who's currently about minus 130, and Carlos Prates plus 110. Prates of Team Fighting Nerds. Prates, Caio Bahaio, Mauricio Hufi, and Gene Silva combined 24-0 in the UFC. We will forget about their other teammates who have losses, who they do not claim as members of Team Fighting Nerds on official UFC graphics. But Prates, very decorated striker, excellent Muay Thai, very dangerous. Ian Garry, we've seen him in main events to date. Prates, cardio questionable across 5 rounds, grappling questionable on bottom. We haven't really seen him tested much. But I think the cardio aspect, the fact that everybody knows he's a chain smoker, he's discussed trying to smoke less outside of the octagon. Like, we literally do not know how this guy's cardio is going to look in an extended fight, but he is the much more dangerous of the two. Garry, to me, is morphing into, I said this to Billy last night, Garry is morphing into a Neil Magny type where he knows he doesn't have the power to hurt opponents in the division. He has the technique. He has grappling upside now that he's working with Charles Oliveira. But I think he's trying to avoid pocket exchanges. He's trying to be all the way in or all the way out. He's either grappling with guys, cage pushing, trying to get them to the ground, or fighting that outside range game, looking to kick guys from range, teep, calf kicks, etc. So I think Garry, is going to be in a lot of close and competitive decisions going forward. Longer fights where the optics are sort of weighing his volume against better damage from opponents. Neither of these guys defend strikes well, and I do like the over here. I'm betting the over 3.5. I'm betting the fight to go to decision. That's my biggest concern. Garry and Prates both defend strikes at about 50%, which is very low for the division. But I think Garry can slow some things down with the cage push, clinching, grappling. I lean his direction, but more so on the decision line. I'd rather bet Garry by decision at plus 290 than bet his money line at minus 130. I'm also going to look for a live number on him after round 2, maybe after round 3, as Prates potentially slows in a longer fight. But my favorite way to bet this, either the over 3.5 rounds at about a pick and price, or the fight to go to a decision at plus 160. I made the goes to decision line about plus 125. Billy Ward, want to bring you in here, get your breakdown of this fight, and then any ways you're considering betting it, including, I believe, we're aligned on the live angle for Garry.
Yeah, definitely. Real quick before I get to the fight, the way you can tell if someone is an official member of the Fighting Nerds is if they win their fight or not. Because if they lose their fight, it doesn't matter how long they've trained with them, they're not a fighting nerd. If they win, even if there's some Polish dude who spent 3 months there, all of a sudden you are an official fighting nerd.
You get the
so
glasses.
It's actually a pretty easy system. If you win, it counts. If you lose, he or she just trained with us for a few months, not a real member of the team. But yeah, I've enjoyed the revisionist history on some of those graphics this week as well. Like, I'm kind of cool with it if we just count the main 4 who's been there forever, but they started adding like Michał Olejniczak got a win when he trained with them. Like, that, we can't count that if we don't.
I think Bruno
losses.
Brazil lost with them, right? And they disregard that one. So
who? Yeah, we've never heard of her. I don't know. But yeah, no, I agree with you. Obviously, a very public chain smoker who hasn't been out of the second round in the UFC seems like it creates one of the more obvious Prates early, Garry late lines. What I have in there right now is I have Garry in rounds 4 or 5 or by decision at plus 185. I think if it goes over, it heavily correlates with Garry winning, but I could also see him just getting starched early by Prates because, as you've mentioned, not great striking defense. And Garry is usually the taller, longer man in his matchup, but he's given up a few inches of reach in this one. But what I did notice is when he fights taller and longer people like Neil Magny or Michael Venom Page, that's when Garry busts out the grappling. And it makes a lot of sense because he has a judo background. He's a judo black belt. And you get those takedowns from the clinch when you do judo. So he wants to clinch with these taller people, eliminate their reach, and then get takedowns. But he got 2 takedowns against Michael Page, 2 takedowns against Neil Magny. And then he's the only person to ever take down Shavkat, who's also a pretty long, rangy fighter. So I bet this last night, and they've since taken it down, but the over 1.5 takedowns was plus 120 on DraftKings for Ian Garry. I think that at anything better than minus 120 or so is a great pick. You can also use that on Underdog or, pick'em sites like that as an option. That's actually my favorite way to play it. So if that comes back, keep an eye out for the fighter props there. Other than that, Garry Live makes a ton of sense. It eliminates the risk. If you don't think you're going to make it through a 14 fight card that starts at 6 p.m., which I'm a little bit nervous about for myself, that 4-5 decision also makes sense.
Thoughts on like a Garry over 1.5 takedowns parlayed with the over on rounds? If he's getting takedowns, there's probably more minutes coming off the clock. I assume that's something I don't place. First off, I'm in New York, so I can't access takedown prop stuff like that at DK. But is that something I assume you can parlay together? And if you can, is that something that interests you?
I don't know if they let you do that. Like when you click the same game parlay menu, a lot of stuff goes away. Can't test it right now. Yeah, obviously that makes a ton of sense because he's probably not going to get 2 takedowns in the first round. So like it adds up. I don't know if they'd let you do it. And I also don't know if they'd give you much better price on that. Cause I would imagine they understand the correlation just between any stat over and the fight over. But yeah, it makes a ton of sense if it's there. I'll have to check that out, see if it is an option if and when those come back up. And again, some of the pick'em sites allow you to do time props as well as that. So that might be the better way to do it.
Yeah, same game parlay functionality starting to roll out a little bit more for MMA on some of these sites. DK has been by far the most accessible for that for quite some time, but on other sites, ESPN, FanDuel, even like the Kambi books, they actually have like pre-built SGPs now, like fighter end over 1.5, fighter end under 1.5. You can't like click around and make your own, but we're getting there. Let's move on to our fight of the night. Skipping over the co-main event, Billy messaged me last night and said no interest in talking about the co-main event. And then, of course, in the sheet this morning, Billy has a bet on the co-main in his top prop section. But we're going to go with a different fight for our fight of the night because we were aligned on a money line play here, and that is on Michel Pereira at minus 142 against Abus Magomedov, who's currently about plus 125. I make Michel about minus 160. I also like him to win inside the distance at plus 150, and I like him live after round one. I like him coming back off of a 5-round fight to a 3-round fight in terms of pacing. Struggled with Fluffy Hernandez late in that fight. Got out grappled there. Not going to happen against Abus Magomedov, who doesn't have that Dagestani style, chain wrestling. Don't love his cardio either. Don't love the cardio for either guy, but I think Michel has better cardio. And I do favor, Abus longer, taller, 1 inch taller, 5 inch reach advantage, but across a 15-minute fight, I think Michel's the better minute winner. And I think he maybe takes over in the second and third round after potentially losing round one against Abus, who's a good starter. So, Billy, thoughts on this fight? Where are you betting Michel Pereira to? And then do you agree or not in terms of the live angle?
I think I agree on the live. I would classify Abus's cardio as more like a question mark than a definitely bad, if that makes sense. Like we haven't seen him super gas out. Michel, we kind of know it's bad, but not horrible. And he's been 5 rounds, so I get that. But Michel Pereira is also a super fast starter, so I don't know that you'll necessarily get the better line. Like it's one of those where if you don't want to bet this pre-fight, it makes a ton of sense. And if it's a worse line, you just say, "Oh well, I missed it," and move on with your day. But yeah, it's a really fun fight. Both guys very aggressive. I think being named Magomedov always throws off lines a little bit. And while he was born in Dagestan, like dude is mostly from Germany and trains there. So he's not hanging out with Habib in the mountains and wrestling all day. So I'm not worried about that. Michel just has all the like athleticism and aggression and physical tools because he might backflip over your guard or do something crazy. Abus, I don't think has that kind of like upside in terms of just the dynamic movements and explosive power. He's been dropped a couple times, and he did get a knockout, and he knocked out Dustin Stolfus in his debut, but since then hasn't shown a ton of power. And Michel can starch anybody. But yeah, I'm kind of I wanted to be back on Michel Pereira. He was kind of gonna get Anthony Hernandez's if he didn't beat him in the first round, and he made it interesting. Like he had his moments in the first round. And it just feels like a very good buy low opportunity against a fighter whose, matchmaking style is, or not matchmaking, but his fighting style is like similar, but in my view, a lesser version of Pereira, where they have kind of the same flaws, but I think the upside for Pereira is a lot higher.
Yeah, I agree. I think Pereira the better athlete too. Not as big, but I do think he's the more explosive of the two, maybe the more durable of the two as well, which could ultimately be the difference.
Yeah.
Going to move on to our favorite underdog sections. There's no pre-fight underdogs that I bet this week. There is one particular live angle that I like quite a bit. We're going to save the Saman Wellmaker fight for best bet section at the end. I was going to talk about it here just because I like a plus money prop in that fight. We're going to save that one for the end. Let's talk about Billy's favorite moneyline underdogs for this week and start with Andre Muniz. He's currently about plus 400 against Ikram Aliskerov. Aliskerov coming off of that knockout loss to Robert Whittaker. Muniz, a very good grappler, very decorated grappler. Have seen him lose as a big favorite, have seen him win as a big underdog. Why are you taking Muniz on the money line here at 4-1 instead of betting his submission prop at plus 850 or his inside the distance odds?
Because I could see him just controlling things on the ground and not actually pulling off the submission. Part of it, and there's a couple of these that I got slightly better lines on early, or much better lines on one. I got Muniz at plus 470 earlier in the week, gave that out my luck ratings. I still like it at 400. 400 is kind of my unofficial cutoff for like a guy has a path to a victory. It's not a wide path. He doesn't have a lot of options, but if I can see how they win a fight in my mind and it's plus 400, it's kind of hard to argue with that. And the grappling is just the obvious way. Aliskerov, another Dagestani name, beard but no mustache, but more of a striker than he is a grappler. And if you look at Muniz's record, the only two people to beat him in the UFC are extremely strong grapplers in Paul Craig and Brendan Allen. Outside of that, his grappling has won him every fight he's been in. So there's a path there. It's not a wide path. This one could look horrible in 30 seconds if he can't get a takedown. But that path is there. Also, this was another one. His over half a takedown prop was north of plus 200 before they took those down. So keep an eye on those. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Muniz. The other one I took early in the week, I wouldn't actually take this one now, but Jimmy Flick was plus 275 on Sunday. I got him at plus 235. He's now plus 150 against Matt Schnell. This is a super binary fight where I think either Schnell knocks Flick out or Flick pulls off some crazy submission. You could probably take the submission there. I think that one makes more sense with that line coming back in. I don't think it's a great price. I haven't looked in the last day or two, but that's the other one I had earlier in the week. Have you looked at that fight at all, Sean?
Yeah, no bet on that one for me. Eileen Schnell, I might prefer. It's weird to say. So the model wants me to bet the over that goes to decision, which I'm not doing. There's just no way. Both of these guys like to quit after round one. Neither of them have good chins. I think Flick did go to a decision in a fight recently that everybody was betting the under or the inside the distance against was it Nate Maness? He ended up surviving all 15 minutes. So
yeah,
it's possible, and it's a big number on the GTD at plus 300. I'm not super interested in betting it. It's just a funny fight and it's great matchmaking because Flick has no chin. Schnell is very good technical boxing, but doesn't have a ton of power, but he has enough power to put Flick away. And Schnell has no chin. Flick has no power. But Schnell, the past two times I believe he's been submitted, tapped out with both hands. Didn't fight the hands, tapped out with both hands together. Yeah. So it's awesome matchmaking. I'm really looking forward to watching this one. I would imagine this is 100% ownership at DFS for you, this fight.
So it's tricky because the line movement makes it you almost have to play Flick because he's plus 150, but the cheapest fighter on the card.
Okay.
But it's hard because if he loses, he's going to score 0. So yeah. I'm not quite there. It is the fight that I put in my DFS breakdown as the I want both sides of, because Schnell's going to be super unowned since he's way too expensive for his money line odds, but also could knock Flick out in 14 seconds and no one would be all that shocked. So it's an interesting strategy angle there where Flick on paper projects much better relative to his price. No one's going to be on Schnell. I see the angle for both guys. It's scary though, because loser probably scores nothing.
Yeah, I think the winner looks minus 900 in this fight, probably ultimately, yeah. Or they look like they were plus 900 for a few minutes, and then they look minus 900 after the fact.
Pull a knockout or submission out of nowhere.
Yes. I mean, I was at the Schnell Sumaderji fight, which is not only the best fight I've ever seen in person, it's one of the best sporting events I've ever seen in person. Just an absolute bloodbath between those two. So I always get excited for Matt Schnell fights, and Jimmy Flick. I mean, the flying triangle. He's a very creative submission artist as well. Really looking.
Could be the last. I'd say could be the last Matt Schnell fight you have an opportunity to get excited for if this one doesn't go well.
I think it could be a double retirement fight potentially. It could be a double retirement fight. Flick retired and came back. I don't know if they both have like one more fight in their contract and, they're just fighting it out and this is it. Schnell's also like complained about fighter pay in the past. The organization doesn't love him necessarily. So yeah, it's a really fun fight. Could be a double retirement fight and not one I'm particularly interested in betting on. If I was to pick one bet, and you told me I have a free bet, where's their value? I might say Schnell by decision, or Schnell decision only. But that's probably like minus 900. But yeah, Schnell by decision. I think, if I had to bet this fight, Flick could run away. Flick could get hurt, run away. Schnell may not have the power to put him away. I think that might be the one value bet, but pass for me.
And to be clear, I wouldn't take the Flick money line now. I just thought it was an interesting fight to talk about and also wanted to, again, remind everyone on Monday afternoons to go check some of these out because I often get much better prices there. One more underdog. Oh, go ahead.
Would you take Flick inside the distance at plus 250 at this point?
Probably not, but I've got some anchoring bias there because that's pretty much the line I got his money line at earlier in the week. So it's hard for me to reverse engineer had I not done that, what I would think. I mean, Absolutely. Sure. If you really want to bet this fight, here, Schnell decision, that makes a lot of sense too. If you really want to bet this one and miss the good lines.
Don't make me bet that, Billy. I don't want to do it. Let's talk about your third underdog, Chelsea Chandler, plus 260 against Jocelyn Edwards. A couple of bantamweights who used to compete at featherweight. Featherweight division has been eliminated in women's divisions in the UFC. Both of these fighters have missed weight a number of times, both on weight on Friday for Saturday's matchup. You like Chandler, the underdog at plus 260. I think she came in as a decent prospect into the UFC, and she's looked awful since. Edwards has continually gotten better, but has been in a number of split decisions throughout her UFC career, and I imagine that is playing into your bet on Chandler here a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, she has a rear naked choke win over Tamiris Vidal, who is the lowest of the low in the UFC division, but her last two wins before that were split decisions. That's Edwards. The biggest point here, though, is it's a fight that's plus 400 to go to a decision, and one fighter is a huge underdog, which you kind of always want to take that. And it's Chelsea Chandler plus 3.5 is favored despite being a plus 250 underdog on the actual money line. So the books are telling you we think this is going to be close. I just like having those, especially in these women's fights that might have a decent amount of grappling where, the judges probably aren't going to have the easiest time in deciding who wins. So you can win this one even if you don't deserve to win it. And I don't think Chandler is that, her losses are Yana Santos and Norma Dumont, which, higher level fighters than the people that, and then Edwards has lost to Perez and Nora Cannoli. So they've both lost to anyone kind of decent and beaten lower level competition. I just don't see them skill wise as that far of a gap. And I think Chelsea Chandler is maybe a little bit younger. No, she's 34. Okay. New to the UFC, but on the older side. Not quite past the age curve yet, but yeah, I just think this one should be lined closer. The books are telling you it's going to be a close fight with that point spread line. Let's take a little sprinkle at plus 250.
Let's move on to our top prop section. I'm going to let Billy kick it off here with the fight between Mingyang Zhang and Anthony Smith. Retirement fight for Anthony Smith, or at least the first of what will be several retirement fights for him, because I think this is his first official retirement. I'm sure he'll end up coming back at some point. But Zhang has been knocked out in round one in the past. I think Brenson Ribeiro did it. Also happened multiple times to him regionally. Or he might have knocked out Ribeiro. I can't remember how that fight went. It was you guys who love getting knocked out in round one and love knocking opponents out in round one. And Zhang knocked out regionally in round one. He looks like an absolute unit. He's huge. He hits hard. He's smiling as he's getting hit. He seems to enjoy being in the cage. But his grappling is a huge mystery. If Anthony Smith clubs him with one overhand and puts him down, I'm not going to be stunned, despite the fact that Anthony Smith looks completely washed. I just don't think Zhang has a good chin. But you're on Smith by decision at 10-1, considering Zhang's grappling is a complete unknown. This could be a good bet. Tell me why you like this one.
I mean, I don't love this one, and I feel like I should apologize for talking about this fight after telling you I didn't want to talk about this fight. It's because DraftKings took down all the takedown props. I had a bunch of takedown props I wanted to talk about here, and I don't know if they're coming back, so it kind of forced my hand. I don't love this bet, but I almost feel that Smith's submission line should pretty much just be his money line, because I don't see any other way he gets this done here. He's got no durability, hasn't really shown much power in, I don't know, what feels like a decade. It hasn't been that long since he hurt someone striking, but it's been a while. His last knockdown was 2021. And he still won that fight by submission. So that's kind of just his only route here. And he's plus 350, plus 400 range is a money line, and we're getting 10-1 on the submission. So yeah, I mean, again, I'm not super excited about this. I kind of don't even want to watch this fight because I have a feeling it's going to be pretty ugly. But if you're gonna, 0.1, 0.2 units on a 10-1 bet, let's root for the old guy to get one on his way out the door. And yeah, that's about it for me.
Fight I like 10 inside the distance. Damon Blackshear against Haile Alatang. That's about minus 106. I projected this closer to minus 150. Blackshear is very bad striking defense. Defense strikes at 47%, but he is excellent jiu-jitsu. He's really good, powerful grappler. Alatang likes to brawl. He could catch Blackshear in the pocket. If he doesn't, I think he gets taken down, and I think Blackshear has a good chance of finishing the fight via submission. Again, I projected that minus 150 to end inside the distance. Currently around a pick'em price. I'm probably going to have to bet that one. Billy, any thoughts on Blackshear and Alatang?
I haven't looked yet, but I just want to see what the specific submission method of victory line is at BetMGM, and if Twister's like 400-1 or something crazy, you got to bet that. He's got the one win by Twister, and if you watch some of his older fights, like he was trying to set it up in other fights, which probably means that the book is out. And for those that don't know, if you have any suspicion that a Twister is coming, it's extremely easy to avoid. Like if you think the guy knows that at all, like you pretty much have to put yourself in it. But the way you put yourself in it is also how you get out of someone being on your back. So if you don't expect it, it's really effective. And he probably Halatang Healy probably expects it at this point. But if they have some crazy line out there and you have like $5 that you don't really care about, that's my favorite way to bet this one. Because how awesome would it be if he gets a second Twister,
Let's talk about David Onama against Giga Chikadze. In the public projections that I used to create my projections this week, Giga was a very popular underdog. Everybody picking Giga to win the fight 50 to 60% of the time, despite being underdog odds. If Onama doesn't grapple here, if David Onama doesn't grapple, I don't know how he wins this fight or covers his line comfortably, aside from knocking Giga out. But in order to win an extended fight, I think he needs top time grappling upside to win against a more decorated technical striker. So even though my model is pointing to value on Onama, saying he should be closer to minus 200, I'm a little skeptical to bet him on the money line. I'd much rather bet Onama inside the distance at plus 215 or by KO at plus 450. Would rather take the ITD just because he's gotten submissions in the past. He's attempting submissions more, and I do think he needs grappling in order to win this fight comfortably. So, Billy, how do you see Onama and Giga Chikadze playing out? Giga missed weight today. I'm not sure if I mentioned that off the top, but Giga did miss weight at Friday's weigh-ins, the lone guy to miss weight thus far is the older guy. So do you think that ultimately impacts the fight in the later rounds? And then in general, how would you bet this one?
Yeah, I love your inside the distance line here. Not only is Giga older, but he's fought once a year since 2022, which is like concerning as these guys get up there because you wonder, their health, their body, whatever, not allowing them to fight more often. And he's also taken a lot of strikes in his recent fights. Like, if you look at the stats, his early UFC fights did not take a lot of damage. And then he got hit 144 times by Calvin Kattar, 62 times by Bruce Leroy Alex Caceres, which is probably the most concerning of these. And then 61 times by Arnold Allen. There's an argument that, at least while he's fresh, Onama hits harder than all of those guys. So I wouldn't be too shocked by Onama knockout. And then plus, like you said, if he can get it to the ground, probably has the grappling upside. And Onama he's like a small Michel Pereira. He comes out, does a lot of stuff. If it doesn't work, it doesn't always go too well for him. So I like that inside the distance. I could see a case for Giga live if Onama isn't able to put him away and overextend. That's a little bit scarier with the missed weight because I haven't looked at him on the scale. You don't know if that's a missed weight because you're like, I didn't feel like cutting the last 2 pounds. I'm just going to feel great. Or like, I killed myself to try to get there. I'm still working really hard. It just didn't happen and you're going to be broken. So if not for that, I would think about Giga live. I'm probably just going to stay away from it, though, with that factor thrown in.
Yeah, I saw he missed weight. I didn't physically see what he looked like, if he was, drained or looked particularly like malnourished or anything. So we'll take a look at Giga. I'm given the weight miss. Nama does tend to slow down after starting fast. Given the weight miss, agree. I'm less inclined to bet Giga live in that spot. But Onama inside the distance definitely caught my attention, plus 215. Let's transition to our best bets as I continue to talk about props on a couple of these fights. But there's 3 underdog money lines that I like. I like prop bets on 2 of those fighters. Billy cosigns on one of them, and then we've got one more fight we're going to talk about where Billy has a money line play and I have a prop as well. So With that, let's talk about Evan Elder against Gage Young. Elder, I believe, is a late replacement for Young's opponent, who was sent to prison potentially for doing some messed up things. Elder, I think, though, is just like a better, bigger version of Gage Young. He's taller, longer, 1 inch taller, 2 inches longer. He's the more fluid of the two on the feet. I think he moves better. I think he's more technical. So I don't really see what Young has in order to threaten Evan Elder unless I've completely misassessed their relative talent level. He was competitive against Killian Salkild on Contender Series, but he was also taken down 9 times in that fight. And Elder looked pretty good in Colorado. Cardio held up in Denver. So overall, I think Evan Elder, kind of an underrated guy, pretty boring name, sort of flies under the radar, but minus 200 to me seemed like value. And then I like him actually to win inside the distance at about plus 350. Seems like more of a point fighter, but there could be a talent gap here. And I could see him pulling off the finish. Thoughts on Elder and Gage Young, Billy?
Yeah, I was struggling with this fight, and then I went back and read my Contender Series breakdown on Gage Young. And what I wrote was he's kind of sloppy in the striking. His striking is, pretty like raw. Like he, will throw hard here and there, but doesn't really look like he has a lot of experience in there. But he's an American wrestler who, if he can just make it a grinded out wrestling match, has a shot to win. And then he got taken down 9 times by a tall, skinny Australian striker. And when that happened, I was like, so the thing that we thought you were best at isn't working against a guy who's more of a striker. I don't really know what kind of upside you have here, like how you win fights. And yeah, Evan Elder, he's 2-2 in the UFC, kind of got a rough start. He's been fine, right? Like, as you put it, boring name. I think he's the next, like, I don't know, Nico Price or Tim Means, or a guy's just going to stick around forever and be like roughly 500. But if you're going to be that guy, you got to beat last minute replacements who came in off a Contender Series loss. And I think he does that. I haven't thought too hard about inside the distance versus decision or any of that. But yeah, it's a little bit pricey around 2-1, but I'm fine with that on Evan Elder.
Roberto Romero, I make him about minus 150. He's currently minus 125. Really like his aggression, his pressure heavy style. Timothy Kwamba, I don't think is necessarily UFC level. He won a decision on Contender Series that he probably didn't deserve. He's a local kid from Las Vegas, trains in Las Vegas, had a lot of people in the building there. They've since changed the rules on how many people you're allowed to have in the building for your Contender Series fights. It was very loud for Timothy Kwamba, and I think that did ultimately influence the judges. Has not impressed me since he's been in the UFC. Tends to back up, and I think the forward optics for Romero here are going to ultimately get his hand raised. Also being outside of Vegas, Kwamba not going to get that hometown judging. But I do think he's durable. I think both guys are durable. I like Romero by decision at about plus 230. And then I also like him on the money line at minus 125. Billy, this is a bet that you're co-signing on. Why do you like Romero too?
Yeah, I mean, you hit most of it. Timmy Kwamba is, officially 1-2 in the promotion counting Contender Series, but he's not. He's 0-3. And even though he won that fight on the Contender Series, they didn't immediately sign him. Like, he only got into the UFC because they needed I don't know exactly what the circumstances were, but he fought. His UFC debut was 8 days after he fought somewhere else, so that wasn't planned, right? Like, no one agrees to do that on purpose. And yeah, I just don't think he's especially good. I don't think Romero is great either, but he does more, right? He's willing to get in there and exchange and like push the pace, and that looks really good for the judges, especially with a live crowd, because he's doing more stuff. Like, I wish I had a more articulate way to phrase that, but sometimes just the more active fighter who looks like they're trying to finish the fight versus just kind of hang out in the fight for 15 minutes is who's going to get the decision. Plus, I would say Romero has most of the finishing upside. So between those two things, is it still right around even money? I haven't checked. Minus 130. Yeah, minus 120, minus 130 on Romero. I think he should be in that, like, Evan Elder kind of range price-wise.
He's actually creeped up to minus 130 this morning, and like I said, I made that minus 150. That's one I would jump on sooner rather than later. Kwamba really hasn't shown much to justify being a guy that you actually want to put your money on at this level. One other favorite money line that I like, I'm not sure if I'm going to play this straight, if I'm going to end up parlaying this up with Evan Elder, or what I'm going to do with it, but Randy Brown, I make minus 350 against Nick Dalby. We love Nick Dalby on this podcast. Cash some big underdog tickets for us, but this is a difficult matchup for him against the guy who's much quicker, longer, and can grapple. Brown 4-inch reach advantage, 4 inches taller. He's not going to get held up against the fence for long stretches like Dalby wants to. If Dalby lands a takedown somehow, Brown is not going to get stuck on his back for significant stretches. In fact, he may be even able to submit Dalby off of his back. He's very good, very underrated jiu-jitsu, but on the feet, the footwork, the movement, the sniping ability, I think Randy Brown dances circles around Nick Dalby here, potentially even covers a point spread, a -3.5 point spread. Maybe that's the direction I'll go, laying a point spread on Brown. Dalby tends to fight close, but I think Brown has significantly more finishing upside and likelier to win a wide decision. Thoughts on the Brown and Nick Dalby fight, Billy? I know, tough to bet against your boy, Nick Dalby, who's captured
Yeah, I'm absolutely not going to, and I'm still mad that he was, I would argue, robbed against Rinat Fakhretdinov in their last fight. He was plus 290 underdog, probably won it. I don't know why. Rinat is by far the luckiest fighter ever in the UFC. Like, I don't understand what the judges see in this guy. I know you're still mad about the Carlos Leal Rinat fight. Yeah, I mean, everything you said in this one makes a lot of sense. And Nicholas Dalby is like 40.5 or something like that. So
41, yeah.
Yeah, it's got to fall off at some point. But he's on what I'm referring to as a 5-fight win streak because he got robbed. And he somehow looks better as he gets older, which, you always wonder in the post-USADA era how that happens because dude looks great. Cardio is great. I don't know. I'm not saying anything. You speculate. I'm not betting against Nick Dalby, though. That was a long way of saying you can't make me do it, and I won't until he actually looks old once.
We're owned by a Danish company. Nick Dalby, a Danish fighter. Billy taking the path of least resistance in terms of keeping his job with that pick there.
I'm also not betting on him, I will say, because your points were compelling enough, and I also wasn't going to bet on him anyway. But I'm not going to bet against him. That's a bridge too far.
Last fight I wanted to highlight. We could see if there's anything else that we missed before we sign off. But Cameron Saman against I'm forgetting Wellmaker's first name. I want to say Matthew, but I know it's not Matthew.
Malcolm.
Yes, Malcolm Wellmaker. For some reason in my head, it's Matthew Wellmaker. I do not know why. Wellmaker coming off a Contender Series. I went back and read your Contender Series preview of the Wellmaker fight. You said, quote, "It's easy to see how he's been involved in a couple of close decisions. His low output makes it hard to definitively win rounds. He's a very good athlete. He's powerful. He's 2 inches taller. He has a 4-inch reach advantage over Cameron Saman. But Saman is much more aggressive. He's going to put out much more volume. And across a 15-minute fight, I think he can rally, likely in the second or third rounds, to win a decision. I like Cameron Saman live. I think that may be the best price point on him. Maybe you could justify a pre-fight bet on him. My model likes the under or the ends inside the distance between these two at plus 114. That said, considering Wellmaker's low volume, the fact that he's only lost once. It was an amateur. He got submitted via armbar. Has seemed durable otherwise, but he's fought almost no competition. So maybe a Saman cardio-oriented attritional finish or just getting clipped early. He does not defend strikes well. I think he has like a 50% striking defense, though a lot of that came in the Peyton Talbot fight where Talbot just sort of overwhelmed him. But that's the thing worth mentioning, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, Billy. The pacing that he's going to face from Wellmaker, completely different from the pacing that he got against Talbot. Talbot was like, fast forwarding against him, where Wellmaker is going to be a much more normal paced fight. So you like Saman, but do you like him pre-fight or are you waiting live? And then any other prop bets you like on this matchup?
Yeah, I'm going pre-fight on him, and you hit most of it. But also, it just feels like a very good buy low opportunity on a guy in MMA collectively were pretty excited about. Mm-hmm. And then he lost to Christian Rodriguez and Peyton Talbot. Christian Rodriguez just beats every undefeated prospect. Like, that's just what he does, and then loses to guys he shouldn't. And we didn't really know that at the time. Like, he hadn't established that pattern yet. But he's, that's the level check there, and it happened to Saman. But Rodriguez also pushed the pace. Not so much with the striking, but landed 3 takedowns, attempted a lot more than that, I think. Yeah, attempted 6 takedowns over 3 rounds, landed 3 of them, always in your face, always doing stuff. And Wellmaker just had such a huge and obvious athletic edge over his Contender Series opponent that it's easy to look really good there. I think he's probably still the better athlete than Cameron Saman, but it's not. It's like arguable, right? You can make a point either way. And I do think Saman has a lot of grappling upside here when he's not fighting someone like Christian Rodriguez. We saw it in a couple of his fights there. He started to mix in the grappling. It looked a lot better, made the striking more dangerous. Where Wellmaker, I think, is just going to be a somewhat low output power striker, and Saman just has more paths to victory. So the best I saw was minus 102. If it got any juicier than that, I think I'd look to some of the props or live. But when it's close to even money, it's hard to pass up on what was once a really well-regarded prospect.
Yeah, I'm going to wait for Sam to get the plus money, but I'm also interested in completely agree. He's 6 years younger. Of the two guys here, he is the prospect. Yeah. Wellmaker's 30. He's probably not going to get significantly better. He trains at a small gym in Georgia, I believe. Like, there's no UFC training partners there. Not a gym that's going to level him up significantly. And a lot of the guys he beat regionally are like 1-4, 0-3. He fought Cants before he even got to
That was one of my notes in the Contender Series articles, like super low level of competition. I don't remember exactly what stat or how I phrased it, but it was one of the lower ones on that season, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and you bet his opponent. You bet his opponent about plus 250 against him. Ultimately got knocked out. I mean, you mentioned that was a distinct possibility. I think the other guy had grappling upside, British grappler. Those guys never come through, but no, I think this could be a value spot on Saman, considering Wellmaker got the knockout on Contender Series. May not actually be a legitimate prospect whatsoever, where Cam Saman, trains with Dricus du Plessis in his gym in South Africa and is like a well-regarded prospect, very technical, and continuing to improve. Just 24 years old, still not in his physical prime. Looks like a child. Physically looks like a child. But maybe 4 years down the line, Cam Saman actually matures into like a better athlete. We've seen it from Chase Hooper. Chase Hooper's gotten bigger and stronger as he's gotten older. He looked like, who would have thought Chase Hooper would be this big and strong at this point, right? He looked like a noodle a few years ago. So maybe Cam Saman, as he gets into his late 20s, gets a little bit more physically strong. I'd say Wellmaker's the better athlete now, but 4 years from now, Saman can get to that level, I think. And when you're talking about athleticism, like, we're not just talking power, cardio, stamina. I think Saman across 15-minute fight. Yeah, the quickness, exactly, the lateral quickness, like across a 15-minute fight. I think Saman maybe looks like the better athlete. In a 5-minute fight, Wellmaker's probably the better athlete. Billy, any other fights? I know we touched on a lot of them. We discussed Gutierrez against Castaneda before we jumped on. Neither of us had any particularly strong take there. That is a fun fight, though. Any other fights that we didn't talk about, because there's maybe only one or two, or that you had additional thoughts on before we get out of here?
I'm scanning real quick. There's too many fights. You mentioned the pacing ahead of time. If they actually get the 8 fights in, or 9 fights, whatever, prelim, I will be very surprised in that window. I don't think I have much on Jackie Amorim versus Polyana Viana. That's like Amorim's a minus 1,000 favorite here. Did we touch on everything else? Oh, Castaneda Gutierrez pre-podcast. Yeah, the interesting there is I've seen people saying this fight being at 45 favors Gutierrez because he's bigger. I was surprised by that. You said the opposite. I don't know that there's a correct answer to that question. Give me your thoughts on that fight, just because I am interested. I've seen a wide variety of public opinion there.
Castaneda needs takedowns to win. Gutierrez, more volume, better technically on the feet, but does run away, doesn't have a ton of power. I think if John lands takedowns, he can probably keep getting takedowns, because we've seen Gutierrez struggle with wrestlers who have success against him in the past, and it's not like his takedown defense gets better as the fight goes on. He tends, every time he's in the grasp, he tends to go down. So it's almost like a spot where if Castaneda gets a takedown early in round 1, I would almost want a live bet on him, because I feel like they're going to keep
right away.
Yeah. Like the moment the takedown comes, it flips to like Castaneda minus 150. Maybe just bet it right there, because if I think he's able to show right away that he can get them, I think he's going to keep getting them. Where if Gutierrez is able to resist them early, like, I think Gutierrez may resist them for the whole fight. Like, it's almost like a strength thing, and like, I don't know if Castaneda is strong enough to bowl him over. He's not like a super technical wrestler, but I think he might be able to power over Gutierrez, especially at 145, and especially not having to conserve the gas tank as much going up from 135 to 145. I believe John missed weight the first time this was booked, and then they rescheduled it, and they moved it up to 145. So, I mean, if he was the one who missed weight and they moved it up, it should help him more than it helps Gutierrez, I would imagine.
They listed it as Castaneda illness, but I don't know if that was a...
It was a weightless illness. I believe he stopped because he was getting sick. Yeah.
But so you never know were you actually sick or were you just not going to get there? But yeah, that's a good point though.
Yeah, so maybe an early live bet on like first takedown attempt, hits it or misses it. Like maybe jump in on whichever side gets the better of that takedown. That's like literally how I think about that fight. I'm like, I just want to see one grappling exchange before I know who
Yeah,
wins the
that's
fight.
fair.
Because Gutierrez, I do expect to chip away with more volume across 15 minutes. That'll do it for a UFC betting preview. You can find more UFC betting content for both Billy and myself on actionnetwork.com. Remember, if you'd like to instantly tail some of the bets that we discussed on today's show, look out for the quick slip links in both the podcast and the video descriptions, or visit actionnetwork.com/bet now. Don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app and sign up for Action Pro for immediate access to expert picks and analysis. Best of luck with all your bets this weekend. Enjoy the fights. Enjoy the violence. Thank you for listening. See you next time.